Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Cris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. How are you guys?
Feeling great.
Good morning. Good Friday morning.
Made it to Friday.
You guys look awesome.
It's my favorite weekend in sports coming up right here.
You mentioned that earlier this morning.
I cannot wait. Four great football games typically this week. And I know some people love Super Bowl championship weekend. This one, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I cannot wait for it.
Beautiful. We should do that. We should spend all day Saturday and Sunday together. Do you want to do that?
Well, let's do this.
With me?
We'll watch Saturday together.
Okay.
All right. We'll do that at my place.
If it goes well.
All right.
All right. At your place.
All right. We know Steph is a huge New England.
Steph will be
there.
there.
We got Dusty, the huge Eagles. All right.
Yeah.
And also we got Liv, huge New England. Yep. All right. So let's watch at my place. Sunday, I'm going to the Minnesota game.
Are you?
You guys aren't invited, all right? But the show's going there.
Okay.
And I'll be back here on Monday to give a recap.
I love
it. A player if you see him on a private jet.
Nice.
Well,
Nick and I will be at Starbucks talking about the game. All right, let's talk about 4 football games. Let's start with just one because it's easier. We are just hours away from the start of the Vikings-Saints game. Granted, it's 58 hours, but it's still hours. All eyes will be on Case Keenum making his first playoff start for Minnesota. Big stage for the backup quarterback who spent most of the season trying to secure the job that he was kind of rocking. Case was the center of attention yesterday. Here's how that sounded.
It's a big game, obviously, but we played in a lot of big games, and it is a game. It's the same game we've been playing. Last time I checked, same field, same stadium, same amount of time. Obviously, it's a big game, and we're putting a lot into this, but we put in a lot into every week. So it's going to be business as usual for us.
CC, how big of a game does this have to be for Case Keenum to mention
game.
it 4 times in 2 sentences?
It's a big game. Oh, same stadium, same goal, but it's a big game.
But it is. It's probably the biggest game this guy has ever played.
It's definitely
with more,
the biggest game
with more attention placed on him probably than he's ever had before. First of all, we'll talk about that in a second, but what do the Saints have to do to walk in there and pull off the upset? Shockingly, they are the underdogs in this one.
The Saints have to put the ball in Case Keenum's hands and force Case to win the game for them. They got to make them one-dimensional. It's like, oh, well, that's what everyone's trying to do. Well, not necessarily, but when you have quarterbacks who don't have experience, and in these playoffs, this is one of several that we have guys that have all the experience, guys that have all the pedigree, and guys that have nothing but questionable pedigrees. And that's what we have with Case and Drew Brees. You don't want to get in a shootout with the Saints. So the Saints, man, if they make Minnesota throw the football, which they've been successful doing, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, these guys, Kyle Rudolph, they've come up big for Case. So they've thrown the ball better, the Vikings, than they have in several years. But their ability to be balanced, have a running attack, because they got great special teams, they got a very good kicker, and they have a tremendous defense. So you have to try to force Case to play at a pace that he is not comfortable, and they got to generate some turnovers, put their offense on a short field, and put the pressure on Case to try to win the game compared to letting him be a game manager.
I think that the Saints need to have a similar game plan. I feel like Bill Belichick is the one, at least in my memory, that made this in vogue, but maybe you can mention a defensive coordinator or coach that did it well before him. A game plan of, I am putting my number 1 corner, Marshawn Lattimore, in single coverage on your number 2 wide receiver, Stephon Diggs. I am then going to double cover Adam Thielen the entire football game, or the vast majority of this football game, and I'm going to see if either Case can beat that coverage or if Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon can beat me. Because the Vikings have been misleading as far as how productive they are running the football. They're 7th in the NFL in rushing. So you're like, oh, they're a great running team. A lot of that is because the defense has been so great. They have had leads late in games, and they've had a high volume of runs to salt away leads.
Even when their offense wasn't prolific, there was a commitment from Pat Shurmur and who's done a tremendous job there as the offensive coordinator, to still run the football, even though if they weren't being very, very productive. So big leads, grinding it out, and also just a commitment on a game basis that they don't put too much pressure on the quarterbacks. Are great points by yourself.
And you mentioned the special teams. There will be a game this weekend decided by field goal kicking. I don't know which one it'll be. It probably won't be Titans-Pats because that's a 14-point spread, but there will be a game this weekend decided by field goal kicking. This weekend, the Saints-Vikings game, to me, is the most interesting field goal kicker matchup, if I may. Kai Forbath was in New Orleans. He was the kicker there. He wins a kicking competition in training camp with Connor Barth, but he kind of wins it by default. They bring in Will Lutz for a one-day tryout. The next day, they call Kai Forbath and cut him. He thought he'd made the team because he beat out his opponent in training camp. He's then out on the street for a little bit. Vikings pick him up. He's been good, not great. Will Lutz has been good, not great. One thing to note, though, Kai Forbath has missed 5 extra points this year. So with the new extra point rule, that it's not just the field goal kicking, it's every last point. And the Vikings, the last time we saw them in the playoffs, Blair Walsh shanked a gimme field goal to beat the Seattle Seahawks. Now, that game was outdoors because the Vikings were playing in the weird year where they were playing in the outdoor.
At University of Minnesota Stadium.
TCF Stadium. So that's just another small wrinkle to watch.
Well, let's go back to who we heard talking about this game, the guy who thinks it's going to be a big game, Case Keenum, because we've been following him all year thinking each game was most likely going to be his last game. You got him and all his lack of experience going up against Drew Brees and all his experience. You talked about the difference between him managing the game and him winning the game. You know, you have to keep his excitement and his energy and all of it tempered just a little bit.
Because
so
he's a very excitable guy, too.
Yeah.
So if you look at his overall personality, going into a game like this, a quarterback, you don't like your quarterback to be a cheerleader or hyperactive. Now, it'd be different if he was Cam Newton. Because Cam, and what Cam does to the team, he gives energy to the rest of the team, but he does it all the time. So he's more used to it. Case, this stage is huge for him. So to be able to keep all his faculties about him, to be level-headed, it's going to be so loud in U.S. Bank Stadium. He's never been in an environment like this. He's played in U.S. Bank Stadium before. But the environment that will be there Sunday afternoon, he's never played in that type of environment. And how does he utilize that for his benefit? Man, make some plays. And watch Case running the football. People who don't watch the Vikings all the time, if you look at his sheer passing numbers, they are good. But his ability to ad-lib and get out of some predicaments, that's what's kind of made this year his best year as a professional.
People don't realize that.
Drew Brees, 12 career playoff starts. Case Keenum, 0. The last quarterback with 0 playoff starts to beat a quarterback with at least 10 was our guy Skip's favorite, Tim Tebow, in the wild card game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's only happened twice ever. One of them was an ultimate outlier game, that Steelers-Broncos game, that a lot of odd factors in play in that. This is when the one quarterback has that much experience, one quarterback has none. That's been a very good predictive factor about who will win the game.
Blind reveal, but it was audible. It was an audible reveal. Moving on to the other game in the NFC, #1 Eagles taking on #6 Falcons. There's no #7, so this should be all Eagles. But shouldas and couldas and wouldas will age you early. Falcons are favored after beating the Rams last weekend. And for Philly, Nick Foles will have to step up to give them their first home playoff win since the 2006 season. All right, CC, what do the Eagles need to do now to win with Nick Foles at the helm?
There's a couple units or people that really need to come up big. And the #1 thing that needs to happen for Nick Foles has nothing to do with the offense and has everything to do with the defense and Jim Schwartz. They got to create some turnovers. They got to be able to put the offense on a short field and be able to give them other possessions. It's so easy to look at, well, Nick Foles, what is he going to do in this game against Matt Ryan? Well, what is the Eagles' defense? If you look at what is the most dominant unit in this game and the most consistent, it would be the Eagles' front 7 and their ability to be able to take people out of the running game and get after the quarterback. That's all we talked about with Philly, like the first 8 games of the season. Carson Wentz and that defense. The defense needs to show up in this divisional round. They know Nick Foles needs some help. The wide receivers, Torrey Smith, you used to be a deep threat. You're not a possession receiver. How many plays over 20 yards can the wide receivers make? Alshon Jeffries is a grinded-out possession receiver. Zach Ertz is their #1 guy, so they need productivity from the tight end. Big plays, productivity, getting first downs, and if the defense plays lights out, that's the best path to victory for the Eagles, and that's what Nick Foles needs more than anything else.
We have focused on what's happened to the Eagles' passing game since Carson Wentz went down. That makes sense because he's their quarterback.
Yes.
But low-key, what has hurt them the most is without Wentz, their rushing game's gone away. Now, I think the point I've been trying to make, and I've asked a bunch of people this, and I must not be asking it the right way because I don't think I'm communicating it properly, is I just feel like if I'm defending the Eagles and now that Wentz is out, I can key off on the running game more. What we know is this. Weeks 1 through 14, when Carson Wentz was there, the Eagles were second in the league in rushing the football. The 3 weeks without him, they are 27th in the league in rushing the football. What does that translate to? Less time of possession, more time for your defense to be on the field. With Carson Wentz, they're averaging 33.5 minutes time of possession per game. Without him, less than 29 minutes time of possession a game. So that's a 5-minute swing. We know they're worse on third downs. From the best, third best third down team in the league to the 30th third best third down team in the league, pardon me. So, but it is the trickle effect. It is not just that the wide receivers are going to be less productive. The defense has a harder job. The running backs have a harder job. That's what we've seen. With all that said, I wanted to remind the audience, they're only 2.5-point underdogs. That's how much the home field matters in this spot. That's how much this game being outdoors matters in this spot. And that's how much Vegas remembers. The Falcons have been inconsistent throughout the year. They have the same talent as the team that went to the Super Bowl, but they have not performed on that level as the team that went to the Super Bowl, which is why, despite all that, the Eagles aren't drawing dead in this game. They're the smallest underdog of the weekend, but the trickle-down effect of losing Carson Wentz has been felt at every level of their team.
Carson Wentz is missed. How do you replace the guy that's the MVP? And they haven't been able to get the offensive productivity. Guys, it just comes down to the simple fact, can they make plays? And they have to be able to make some plays in the passing game because that makes them commit more people to coverage, which opens them up for the running game. But in a game like this, I believe you acquire someone like LeGarrette Blount just for this. It's probably going to be a sloppy field, great potential for some rain. Man, hit him with a blunt object. Let him get 15 carries, get that running game going, get into some type of rhythm, and then they can have some semblance of the success that we saw in the first week 1 through 14.
Jacksonville heading up to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. The first time these two teams played, Jaguars dominated, winning 30-9, picking off Big Ben 5 times. Second time these two teams played, we don't know because they haven't played yet. Don't even get me started on the third time. Steelers are favored by a touchdown in this one. CC, what would the Jags need to do to pull off this upset?
Go back, look at the film. And they're not going to be able to create the 5 interceptions. But Ben can throw them 2. And if they can get 2 INTs, to me, 2 INTs after you've had 5, because of the psyche on Ben, I believe it's like 4 interceptions. All right? Because Ben said, I'm looking forward to this game. Man, if he throws an interception, and I pray that Jalen intercepts one, because the theatrics and the drama and the spiciness that will follow will be, it will be must-see TV. So they gotta try to create turnovers. Also, they gotta force Pittsburgh to be either one-handed, either force them to throw or force them to run. You can't let them have it both ways. And that's one of the things that makes the Pittsburgh Steelers offense such a threat, is because they can do both. They can go 3 receivers. They can go 2 tight ends. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. So for me, I'm stacking the box. I'm going to make them throw the ball, and I'm going to put some pressure on Ben. All right? I don't believe the field conditions are going to be great. All right, so I would force the wide receivers to be able to beat my 2 corners on the outside. I would not let them run the ball on me, and I got to get those turnovers because my quarterback is Blake Bortles, who thinks he's LeBron James because people hate LeBron James. So he needs some help, and that's paramount for Jacksonville's success.
Before I get into my thoughts on this, you mentioned the field conditions. I just want to follow up with a question for you. Antonio Brown hasn't played in a month, calf injury. Really tough corner against him, whether it's Boye or Jalen Ramsey, and bad field conditions, potentially likely in Pittsburgh. As a wide receiver, tell me about what all those things put together. I don't know how much the calf in the field.
Well, for one, he's healthy.
Okay.
All right, the calf has healed up, so he is close to 100%. The wide receivers know where they're going, so they have a huge advantage if the field is wet, if the football is wet. So the wide receivers do have an advantage.
Okay.
Also, AB needs to be able to draw coverage. He's got to stop them from playing him one-on-one and draw a double team or cover two. Cover two opens up the running game. If they play one-on-one, they're going to target AB. He's going to get at least 8 to 10 targets in this football game. So Jacksonville, they have to put coverage on Antonio Brown.
Okay, so let's say, would you consider a great defensive performance by Jacksonville holding Pittsburgh to 13 points? Like Jacksonville, you think they'd be happy with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
They would take that right now. They wouldn't even get on the plane.
Right. So if they take that right now, let's just say Steelers score 13. Defense does its job to a huge degree. Still got to find a way for Jacksonville to get to 14. And I think most people would say, well, maybe they can do what they did with the 2 defensive or 1 defensive touchdown like they did in Week 5 where they had 2. It's worth noting, going into that game against Jacksonville, the Steelers had not given up a defensive touchdown since 2014. So that's an outlier. So throw that one out. Well, then maybe it'll be Leonard Fournette. And he
destroyed them in Week 5.
He did destroy them in Week 5. Then something interesting happened in
Not necessarily destroyed them. If you take away the one big run he had, because Pittsburgh, to me, looked misaligned on that one play, Pittsburgh played him a fairly decent game if you take that one run away.
He had the 90-yard run, which ended the game essentially. But but here's the thing: through 6 weeks, Leonard Fournette was healthy. Then he had an ankle injury. Show America what he looked like through 6 weeks, and then after that, through 6 weeks of the season, 6 games, almost 100 yards per game, 12 runs of 10+ yards, 6 touchdowns, 4.6 per carry. Over the last 8 games, since he came back from that injury, those yards per carry are down to 3.2.
Yep.
League average is 3.6. So since he's been back from that ankle injury, and since the weather's gotten colder, and since maybe he's hit that rookie wall, he's been an average running back, actually a slightly below average running back. And he's going to be the guy who has to have a huge game for their offense to have any chance of going, unless you believe in Blake Bortles. So that is a point of concern. I think people look at Leonard Fournette's whole year, they're like, oh, guy had 9 touchdowns, 1,000 yards as a rookie. They don't realize so much of that was done over the first 6 weeks of the year before he got hurt.
And most of that was done without a marquee 1 or 2 wide receiver. So he did have a great year. When you look at that in the context of they don't have explosive, skilled players, he had a tremendous year. Also, the league looked at the first part of the film, and I'm sure they adjusted for the last 6 games.
Right. Now, look, the Steelers, you look back on that game, and, the Steelers have gotten obviously much better. Ben's not going to throw 5 interceptions, but the Jaguars' defense also got better. I think this will be a very competitive game. What's the spread now?
7.5.
Is that higher than you thought it would be?
It's right. This is one that was about right in line with where I thought it'd be. I think it would. The Jags are just hoping it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter and that they can steal it. Like, I think that's their mentality of it. And I just want to be clear, I wasn't trying to knock Fournette. I think just people don't realize how different the production's been.
You can have spicy takes. You don't have to apologize.
No. But I want to be fair to a rookie. That the line of demarcation to me in a season was the ankle.
Yeah, you're getting a little soft. Nobody
knows.
You're trying to wrap your comments back.
LeVeon Bell played under the franchise tag this season, says he doesn't want to do it again in 2018. He hates those tags. He says he'd consider sitting out if the Steelers go that route for a 2nd straight year. What do you think, Cris Carter? Should Bell really sit out if he doesn't get a long-term deal?
For one, he's not going to sit out. We've only seen a few players in the history of the NFL who have sat out. None of them have retired over a contract. And I know the work conditions in Pittsburgh, the franchise tag Jenna is a smooth $14 million that he happens to be playing under now. Now, I do understand. They do want the security of a long-term contract. Most of the superstars, they do deserve it. But let's not get crazy here. He's not going to retire. He might sit out the first few games of the season, but there's nowhere else in this world that he can make that kind of money. So he will be playing in the National Football League somewhere. He might sit out training camp and all those things. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't with the Steelers, because the amount of money they're paying Ben and AB, it's hard to have that third guy making that kind of money.
So, CC, so if people don't know, franchise tag this year, your first time tagged, you get the average pay of the top 5 guys at your position. So this year for a running back, he made about $12.5 million. If they tag him again, they have to add 20% to it. So it'd be right about $14 million. So if he's tagged in back-to-back years,
almost $27 million over 2 years.
Right.
I'm going to quit.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think he's going to quit either. And he mentioned that if I sat out the year, I'd probably end up retiring. To CeCe's point, this was a guy that's not like he was the #1 overall pick of the draft. His rookie contract didn't pay him enormously by NFL standards. This next contract would equal almost the entirety, just the franchise tag, would equal almost the entirety of what he had made in his whole career leading up to this next 1-year deal. I don't blame him for his frustration, though. Because running backs have such a short shelf life. And the Steelers, guess how they used him this year, Jenna? Like he wasn't part of their long-term plans. He had 406 touches. It's the 3rd most touches of anyone in the NFL in the last 11 seasons. Like, they know that when you use a running back like this, it potentially takes a year or 2 off the back end of their career. They don't have to.
So you think Pittsburgh intentionally put all these carries on him so he wouldn't be part of their future?
No.
Oh.
I think that if he had signed this offseason a long-term deal, they would have been more cautious with him. I think you're more cautious with someone you are tied to long-term than someone who you know might be playing somewhere else next year.
So what is Dallas doing with Zeke? They're putting all those carries on him?
Well, Zeke, his rookie year, first of all, it's his first year. This year, he didn't have a ton of carries.
Now, I haven't heard of a coach, I haven't heard of a system in my over 30 years in the NFL that they were trying to take carries away from a guy because potentially that would extend his career, or they put all the carries on him because they didn't care about it. To me, it's about winning.
I have heard of that system. I experienced it firsthand.
Tell me.
The Chiefs with Jamal Charles in year 4 for him. People were furious. He was averaging, he was 100th of a yard away from setting the all-time record in yards per carry. People were furious why he wasn't getting more carries. And the coaching staff and GM at the time repeatedly said, we want Jamal here for a long time. We are worried about him long term. We don't want to put too much wear and tear on him. So
now, wasn't Jamal Charles a little undersized for a running back? Like, wasn't he?
He wasn't as big as LeVeon Bell.
All right, well, let's stick to Bell. No one thinks it's odd that he's saying this now? The weekend before he's going to...
We've heard this before, Jenna. This is not new news.
But on the Friday before they're going to play a playoff game, you want to talk about whether you're going to get tagged or not next year, whether you're going to play or not? I'm going to sit. He's already thinking about that?
It's not going to affect him in the game.
I'm sure it isn't. But isn't this just one more thing in the Steelers folder of ridiculous comments to make before you're playing a playoff game?
He came out shortly thereafter and was like, I'm just focused on the game. But he clearly, this is in his mind. I think one of the reasons this might be front of his mind is CeCe. Everyone make the same during the playoffs?
Yes.
Is it anything close to what your season check is?
No, if you're an established player.
Right.
No, it's not.
So Le'Veon Bell during the regular season.
But the Super Bowl ring is worth more than the playoff stipends.
Of course. I'm not disputing that. But the Le'Veon Bell's during the regular season.
Tom Brady's making less, too.
Wait.
Agreed. But Tom Brady's, A, already made his money, and B, on a long-term deal. Like, I don't blame a player that has, if Le'Veon Bell suffers a devastating injury in this playoff game, he has not a single dollar guaranteed to him from the NFL moving forward, and he wanted a long-term deal this offseason.
So yesterday seemed like a good day to say it because that seemed like when it was going to happen. Regardless, my question to you, do you think the Steelers are going to franchise tag him again?
They're going to either franchise him or let him go.
They used him so much this year.
It's not because of that.
No, hold on, CeCe. Wait, just real quick. You say it's not because of that.
Because we can't prove that.
Okay, but I don't, CeCe, it makes total, just logical sense that one of the reasons you wouldn't want to give Le'Veon Bell, if they were to sign him to a long-term deal, they wouldn't have to pay him $14 million a year.
It's money, Nick. The quarterback's making a lot of money, all right?
Yep.
All right? They got defensive players that are coming up for their second contract that they have to appropriate resources to.
But CeCe, but you just said, man, that they might franchise him, right?
That's for protection, absolutely.
Right, so they would have the money for next year at $14 million. The reason they wouldn't feel comfortable, I believe, giving him a long-term deal is because of the position and because they know the wear and tear for running backs as they get older.
And also, Nick, isn't he one positive test away from being suspended?
For a year,
oh,
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So don't that have something to do with...
Absolutely.
Oh,
100%.
Okay. So we should have brought that up.
Well, I'm glad you did.
New topic here. Cavs Cavs lost again last night, a blowout at the hands of Toronto. Do we think the Cavs are finished this season? Obviously not. Do we think they won't regain their footing? Obviously not. But the Raptors beat them 133-99. The first time LeBron has lost by 25 in back-to-back games since returning to Cleveland. He had 26 points, and Isaiah Thomas, 5 of 26 from the field over his last 2 games. Needless to say, LeBron not happy.
We're just in a funk. We're in a funk. Once again, we're back to the beginning of the season. We just got to find a way to get out of it, and it's going to just start with us and everybody just getting back to what we're doing. We're playing good ball, but it's so fragile, and I don't know where, it kind of went wrong or what happened. Kind of the switch went back, but we got to try to pick it back up and find it.
The word fragile always stands out to me when I hear him say that. It was an interesting and odd way to describe it. But what has to happen at this point for you to worry about the Cavaliers, Nick?
Oh, no, I'm worried. I'm seriously worried about the Cavs. I mean, let's just talk about some other teams in the East first. The Celtics. They're looking like the #1 seed. They've got an MVP candidate at point guard who's as good as anybody in the league in the fourth quarter, and a #3 pick of the draft who's a surprise candidate for Rookie of the Year, the Raptors. Looks like the best Raptors team of this era, with DeMar DeRozan playing at an all-star level. The Bucks are a potential scary 5-6 seed. And the Cavs are staring at LeBron's first losing month since his rookie Oh, wait. That's what everyone was saying last January. All of those things. And all of those things are true right now. The Celtics, they're the 1 seed, and they've got this MVP at point guard. The Raptors, this is a scary Raptors team. It's the best team of the era. And the Cavs, they might have a losing month. We'd never seen it before. That's what was going on last January. And people want me to be concerned this January. So I won't be. The fewest games you can play to get to the finals is 12. The Cavs, since LeBron has been back to Cleveland, have played 14, 14, 13. So the gap, even if the Cavs have come back a little bit, and other teams have inched a little bit closer, the gap was so big. No, I'm not going to be fooled. I'm not going to let the January swoon concern me, Jenna.
CC, they lost to the Raptors. They gave up 133 points. This is after a closed door, really all-important, have-to-be-there meeting about getting their act together and learning how to play some defense.
Yeah,
You're not at all...
Exactly.
So tell me, let me ask you the same question. What has to happen for you to be worried about the Cavs?
This is the thing, Jenna. There should be concern. And, yes, we have seen this in January. But to those who think the Cavs got lucky when they did win the championship, there would be no signs coming from January that they could repeat the one time that they got lucky in beating Golden State. Now, if you keep your eyes on the East, all right, Boston's got 8 more wins than them, all right? That is significant in January. So that's why Nick said they're probably going to secure the #1 seed, or the Cavs might try to give it up like they did last year. He's not concerned about Toronto, even after last night, them getting beat, because Toronto hadn't been able to finish the deal in the playoffs. But if he opened up his eyes, he wouldn't be looking in the East, because the real competition has never been in the East. The competition is in the West. And if he's watching Golden State and if he's watching Houston, even though they do have injuries, these teams right now, if they played the Cavs, they would sweep the Cavs in 4 games. It would be ugly. So I have concern, because the only goal for LeBron in Cleveland, it's not a seed in the Eastern Conference. It's not 1, 2, or 3. It's winning a championship. And they look nothing like a championship team. So, Jenna, I'm concerned. I'm not like everyone else. I'm not going to keep my eyes on the East, because the East does not matter. It's what's going on in the West.
Cece, but every January LeBron's been there. At this moment of the season, January 12th of the year, they've looked like they'd get swept. Last January, the first January LeBron was there.
What was the final score last year?
Hold on. They lost in 5, but hold on.
Okay, so it was 4-1. But they looked like they were going to get swept in January, but they got beat 4-1.
Hold on a moment. Let me finish my point. The first year LeBron was there, they were 19-20 at one point in January. The second year LeBron was there, they fired their coach in January. Last year, people were talking, like you are right now, that the Warriors are just leaps and bounds better than everyone. And while, yes, CC, they lost in 5, we were also at a game 3 where they have a Corver open 3 when that series probably ends up being 2-2 and we see what happens. We know, and you can say you're not focused on the East. A good portion of the sports world right now believes the Celtics are the favorites in the East and believes the Raptors can give the Cavs serious trouble.
But I think all that's irrelevant. All those are subplots. Can they beat Golden State? See, you can have the conversation, and that'd be nice for you because you have too much data, and there's too many years where LeBron has dominated the East. Take the conversation to the West.
Right.
If they were to start the finals right now, what would happen? And so, for me, I'm concerned because I see what's going on in the West. Right. All right? Yeah. I think Golden State is at least as good or better than they were last year. All right? They're more athletic. They got a couple more subs to come off the bench to be able to give them more time, that brings some athleticism. I know Houston's better.
Hold on, but Cece, if you want to actually do this and start the finals right now, the Cavs would sign up for that. You know why? James Harden's injured. Steph Curry's injured. So that will change, and the Cavs will change. And the injuries are...
If Houston was healthy...
But they're not.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
If Houston was healthy and they were playing like the Cavs, would you be concerned? Don't answer. If Golden State was healthy and they were playing like the Cavs, would you be concerned? Don't answer, because I know you don't get concerned about nothing. But we would as the general public. So why wouldn't we be concerned about Cleveland?
Because there's 2 extenuating factors. One is... LeBron is different than every other player in the league, and his ability that we've seen to ratchet up his entire team's defensive ability in the postseason, we've seen it year after year after year. That's the first point. The second point is those other teams don't have their second most important player coming back from injury. Isaiah Thomas was 0 of 10 to start the game last night. That is if that's who Isaiah Thomas is the rest of the way, I'll be concerned. I don't believe it will be.
What about J.R. Smith not scoring? What about Kevin Love? Was playing his best basketball. Now he's not playing as good. IT's back.
Right. Those are real concerns if I believe they are going to continue.
That look on your face is concerned, even though the words coming out your mouth.
All right. College Hoops doubleheader tips off tomorrow on Fox. First, Michigan battles number 4 Michigan State at 11:30 Eastern. Then it's number 25 Creighton against 10th-ranked Xavier. It's a college basketball doubleheader on Fox, or stream it live on Fox Sports Go. And who better to talk about all the action than Michigan State head coach Tom Izzo, who joins us now. Coach, good morning. Thanks so much for getting up and hanging out with us.
Well, Jenna, Nick, CC, it's great to be around with you early in the morning.
So right before we came back, you said hello to CC, and CC gave you a little punch there about Ohio State early in the week. So I'm not going to bring up Ohio State. I'm not going to bring up anything other than what is the key from where your team is right now to bouncing back against Michigan?
Well, we didn't play as well in the last 2 games, but as CC knows, sports in general, especially basketball with the number of games, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And give Ohio State credit, they played really well against us. And then it was a very physical matchup with Rutgers. And, we didn't shoot the ball as well. So the last 2 games, we haven't shot it as well, and we haven't defended as well. They kind of go together.
Hey, Coach, we understand rivalries, really understand them in football, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Michigan in football. Basketball, we don't necessarily get into the rivalry, but I know that it's just as intense. What is the rivalry like with the University of Michigan, and what does it mean for you as far as recruiting throughout, the tri-state area?
Well, CC, I don't know if it affects recruiting the same way as it maybe seems to in football, but I know this for sure. I know you'll be pulling for us this week because it's un-American for an Ohio State guy to pull for Michigan. So at least
Coach,
I got you on my side this week.
Every week you don't play Ohio State. I'm always pulling for you, except when you're playing Ohio State.
That's fair enough. But, the rivalry's big. I mean, I think kids grow up in this state. We both have a lot of kids from our state on our team. You kind of grew up either a Michigan or Michigan State fan. And these last few years, the rivalry's been a rivalry. Early in my career, we couldn't win a game, then they couldn't win a game. And now I think both teams are pretty good. They should be ranked, and it should be a great game.
Coach, we talked before the year. One of the names that came up was Miles Bridges. I want to know, now that we're nearing the midway point of his sophomore year, what your thoughts on his play have been and where you think he's excelled, and maybe also where you look for him to grow as the year goes on.
Well, Nick, I liked it a lot better when I talked to you in October. We were undefeated then, so we got a couple losses now, and it's more fun being there in person. But Miles has had a heck of a year. He's averaging almost the same amount of points as last year. He's gotten much better with the ball, much better passer. What I got to do is get him a little more selfish. He's a star player that is so team-oriented that sometimes doesn't take over a game. And so that's what we've worked on lately, trying to get him a few more shots, be a little more aggressive. And I think he'll do that. He's an unbelievable kid, and we just got better talent around him. And yet, he's trying to find his spot, which he will.
Coach, I know it's blasphemous to think this, but not everyone gets a chance to watch every Michigan State game. So give us an idea of who Miles Bridges is. Give us a player that maybe you've coached in the past that Miles reminds you of the most.
Well, he's got a little bit of a kid in Morris Peterson that I had, but he's got a little bit of Valentine. He's kind of one of those guys that can do a lot of different things. He's improved his defense so much, but he's 6'7", he's 230, he's strong, he's athletic, he can shoot it, and he's an unbelievable kid. So all those, good student. So he's almost too good to coach at times, but yet he's got to learn, like everybody does, that he has a different role this year, and the role is he's got to be our go-to guy, and he's capable of doing that, sometimes too unselfish to do that. So that's where I got to, I'm a selfish guy in general. I got to hopefully some of that will fall off on him.
Coach, last season, I fell in love with Bridges, tremendous freshman season. Like you said, you were shocked that he decided to come back for his sophomore season. But this year, I've gotten the love touch again. Jaren Jackson, I'm in love with him, Coach. And what type of role, as we get into conference play, do you see his contribution becoming more impact to the game? And how does it differ from the first part of the season?
Well, you're right, CC. Jaren Jackson has been a kid at 6'11", 7'4", wingspan. Really good student. He just kind of got a little bit of everything, but he's a stretch four at 6'11". He can shoot the three, but he's starting to learn how to post up now. He's gained 20 pounds. He's getting a little more physical, trying to run the court a little bit better. I see this kid as a very high ceiling, but one that I think we're going to get a lot of now that he's got his feet wet in the first half of the season. And as you know, freshmen improve to sophomores once Christmas comes.
Coach, you mentioned when we talked last, you guys obviously didn't have any losses. What's good for you guys with a couple losses is everybody has a loss. I can't remember a time this early in the college basketball season. There's no undefeated teams. There's only a handful of even one-loss teams. I think there have been 33 top 10 losses already this season. Is it the parity? What do you make of it? Is this how different is this college basketball season than some of the more recent ones?
Well, I've been a little surprised myself. I talked to Jay Wright the other day about it, and I think there is parity, but I also think it's a little more difficult right now keeping everybody focused on the task. The social media, as good as it is for some of you, it's not as good for coaches, and I think just handling all the noise around you. I don't care if it's college, pro. It doesn't matter what sport it is. There seems to be a few more ups and downs. I think last week there were 15 top 25 teams that got beaten, most of them by unranked teams. So parity's part of it. We have transfers now. We have guys leaving early. I think a lot of people are playing a lot of freshmen and sophomores, not as many juniors and seniors. It's going to be a little more up and down when you're doing that.
Coach, you guys are 18 games into the season, but you're coming off a rough week. Can you set up what the rest of the year, the rest of the season is going to look like for you, what your goals are now?
Rough times are the good times. That's when you learn the most about your team. And, we've had some great practice and meetings. I mean, our guys are really focused in on what they got to do, but the task does get tougher. When you're in a conference like ours, where every place you go, it's the 4th of July and Christmas. We even made Columbus a basketball school last week. That place was packed. It was rocking, and a lot of things were going well. So that's the neat part about the Big Ten. We've led the nation in attendance for like 40 years. So every time you go on the road, it's a very tough outing. So we just got to stay focused in and keep getting better. The goal is to get better every day, win or lose, and be ready down the stretch.
Hey, Coach, a little sidebar. You and I talk about athletes developing. There happens to be a family, I'm not going to mention them right now, that has a very influential father that's influenced the development of the kids. I'm just trying to picture Coach Izzo. What would Coach Izzo be like in a situation that had a family like this? Would you agree with some of the decisions to pull kids out of school? You and I talk about developing kids all the time, Coach. I need your help because I'm really struggling in this area with this particular family.
Well, I heard your comments the other day. You know, I do watch the show, guys. I get up early and I get a chance to watch. And I heard some of your comments the other day about a certain family. And I just think it's sad that, you know, this day and age, parents have become, you know, more helicopter parents, as they say. And the only thing I would say to anybody, whether it be reporters, whether it be parents, you know, if you wanted to be in practice every day to understand what's going on, you know, that's one thing. But, you know, there's so many things that go on, even in a kid's life. Even the kids don't tell the parents. So, you know, I think that my best success has been when I have that triangle of parents, coaches, and players all working in the same path. And, you know, I think that's very important. I am disappointed what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, because I don't think it's best for anybody. I don't think it's best for the kid, and I know it's not best for the team. But I do feel for a kid who's got that much pressure on him. But it is what it is. And I don't know how I'd handle that, CC. Hopefully I won't be in that situation.
I think you'd handle it great. Thanks, Coach, for being a great friend of the show. Thanks for joining us. Good luck tonight against that team up north.
Yeah, he got you to say the name. I was surprised.
We love that you watch the show. Please keep watching. Thanks, Coach.
We will, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.